Welcome to another Dragonlance Saga Order of Ascetics news episode. It is Bakukul Dark Ember the 21st. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to go through the Iconochronos, and when I was going through it, ran across a couple news bits. That's right, we're going to talk about Dragonlance Chronicles, we're going to be talking about the Mighty Nine, the Immersive Quest, and Battlemarked. So with all of that... I would like to thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. And you can always pick up Dragonlance Media using my affiliate links. Those links are in the description below. Okay, let's dive into today's Order of Ascetics news. First and foremost, Dragonlance. The Dragonlance Chronicles collection has dropped to its lowest price ever for Black Friday. If you were reading fantasy and playing Dungeons & Dragons in the 80s, you undoubtedly hold Dragonlance books near and dear to your heart. That said, you will be very happy to know that Penguin Random House launched a 40th anniversary hardcover Dragonlance collection earlier this year, and it is now on sale at Walmart for only $16. Now look, I looked this up. It's on Amazon for $16, but, I'm sorry, it's $18, but the soft cover is like $30. So the hardcover is less expensive than the soft cover. And this is actually a really important story, the reason why I'm bringing it up in the first place, because it's the holiday season. If you want to get someone introduced to Dragonlance, the Chronicles is a perfect place to start. And it's great that it's discounted, because you can't find a new copy of the Dragonlance Chronicles anywhere else. It's out of print. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I was looking for a copy to give to my son, and I ended up getting the annotated softcover for him in the secondary market, but they're not even printing the original Chronicles anymore. And so it's really great that they're offering this version if you want a first edition and you don't want to go for a used aftermarket copy of the Dragonlance Chronicles. Now, let's be honest. The cover sucks. This version of the Chronicles is the worst version of the Chronicles there is because you don't have the beautiful covers of the original Chronicles, or even the re-release of the original Chronicles, or even the re-release of the original Chronicles. In my head, there's like 3 different covers. And so that kind of does suck that you can't actually get those. However, with this, you can get them for fans or for brand new fans or for people who are not yet fans very inexpensively in a hardcover format. And admittedly, I haven't read my hardcover version of it, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it would hold together. The hardcover annotated edition I have of both the Chronicles and Legends, the spine cracked and pages are coming out. And so you really have to be careful when you're reading it. I had not run into that issue with this newest version, so fingers crossed that's not going to be a problem. Okay, so that's 54% off the list price and an all-time low. It's also available on Amazon as part of the Black Friday week, priced at $18.50, which matches the previous all-time low. Get ready to go back to the trilogy where it all started. The collection will include the first 3 novels in the series from Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, and Dragons of Spring Dawning, with a new foreword by Joe Manganiello. It's a bullshit foreword. It's totally pointless. There's no reason to even read it. That is not a justification to buy this collection. As you can see, this book includes a gorgeous dragon-themed cover in gold and black. It's a soft touch. It leaves tons of marks on it. It's not beautiful, in my opinion, at all. The original artwork was beautiful, and it immersed you in the actual story by showing you the actual characters and monsters in the actual story. This doesn't do that. This is just a gold dragon. What does that have to do with the Chronicles? Nothing. Inside, you'll find 1,056 pages that launched millions of fantasy fans. The official description reads, and it doesn't actually show it. Speaking of Joe Manganiello and Dragonlance, you may have heard that his Dragonlance live-action project won't be moving forward thanks to Hasbro being gun-shy after a mix of failures and changes at the company. However, the script were well received by execs, according to Joe Manganiello, and he hopes that they might be revived in the future. Quote, Tracy and Margaret were all about it, Manganiello said. It was really me getting in there and fleshing out the world they built and a world they hinted at in some places but didn't signify. I'm sure I shined the magnifying glass on. Manganiello also mentioned that he was inspired by HBO's treatment of True Blood, which he was in, and so maybe that's why he was inspired by it, which is based on the Southern Vampire Mysteries novel series. Quote, the biggest fantasy literary agent in town, he said, and these are his words, not mine. I'm going to stop that quote right there because that's not true. Those are his words about someone else's words. And it's important to make that distinction because I may read something and say, oh, that's fantastic. And then someone else hears that and then they say, well, Adam said it was the most fantastic thing he's ever read in the world. Part of that's true, not all of it. And that's where I'm taking a grain of salt whenever it comes to third-hand versions of first-hand comments. That it was the best fantasy pilot he's ever read since the original Game of Thrones, Manganiello said. There also another executive that read it and said it was one of the best fantasy scripts he's ever read. I actually got an email just this morning from a producer who said it was awesome and that he wanted to send it to the rest of his company in hopes I develop another fantasy IP. Maybe somewhere down the line, someone comes back to the company and switches hands and maybe someone sees the value, Manganiello says. So that was the article. Just letting you guys know that it's at a massive discount. If you are ever wondering whether you should pick up this edition because it's the only current in-print edition that's not used available, now's the time to do it. And so I just wanted to bring it out here and let you guys know. All right, so let me know. Are you going to be picking up this edition if you haven't already? And if you have picked it up, is it even worth the purchase price? Is this edition better or worse than the second-hand market getting the original editions where you get that beautiful Elmore cover or the later Matt Stowicki covers? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's talk a little Mighty Nine. Now, I am not familiar with this. I did watch the original Critical Role first. I think there's 2 seasons that I think I watched. But again, it was when they were first released, and so my memory's a little blow. In any case, the Mighty Nine understands Magic better than most Dungeons & Dragons players. The Mighty Nine shows that how you cast a spell actually matters. That's interesting. Anyone who's watched Critical Role's animated fantasy adventure, The Legend of Vox Machina, knows that the magic within the show doesn't linger on letting the audience know how or why it works. For a show based on Dungeons & Dragons, a game well known for its rules and mechanics, Vox Machina decides to skip on the details to focus instead on how each character's personality is reflected in their spells. The most obvious example is Scanlan, but there's plenty of personality in Calith and Pike's magic too. The Mighty Nine, however, is not playing around when it comes to magic. While Vox Machina's magic system is largely based on vibes, the Mighty Nine goes the extra mile to showcase the various ways magic works within different parts of the continent of Wildmount, and how it differs from class to class. The show doesn't skip the details about casting spells either, showing more care for them than many Dungeons & Dragons players. On the surface, without having seen this, I love that, because what it does is remind me of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, where Dragonlance came from. And I know that Critical Role and Vox Machina is not Dragonlance. I understand that. But magic is incredibly important to the Dungeons & Dragons game. It used to be something that was special, that was really difficult to master. In Dragonlance, it actually is like a drug that fuels you. It's like a dopamine hit every time you feel the magic running through your veins, and it exhausts you after you cast a spell, draining you entirely. You actually lose the spell from your memory in AD&D mechanics. Even if you miscast it by getting hit or interrupted during the attempt at casting it, making casting spells incredibly powerful and incredibly tricky and dangerous. All that being said, in modern editions of the game, that's not the case at all. You could be a fighter, and you could heal, and you could cast spells through cantrips or through actual spells simply by choosing a background or a feat, allowing you to be everything from a cleric to a wizard and a fighter. And there's nothing special about that. There's nothing inherently powerful or dangerous or challenging at all about that. And so I love that they're bringing this idea that magic is something that needs to be paid attention to. And priests are different than wizards, just as an example. So for the most part, Dungeons & Dragons players have a general idea when it comes to magic. They know how important concentration is for maintaining a spell, and why you should always cast haste on a martial character. But when it comes... I just want to put this out here real quick. I've never had a player cast haste on anyone ever. Not once. In my entire life. I have never had a play. It's like the most logical thing that you would do, but it has never happened in any of my games. I would be very interested. Have any of you either yourself cast it on tanks or had anyone cast it on any tanks? I would be very interested to find out. Okay, so for the uninitiated, spell components are the various physical requirements necessary to cast a spell in Dungeons & Dragons. They're categorized as material, somatic, and verbal. Somatic is for hand gestures, verbal is for the words of power that have to be spoken, and material is specific objects that are usually consumed during casting. Depending on the spell, you can only need one or two components, but some require all three. Regardless, the material side of spell components has rarely been something I've thought about during my time playing, especially during Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, introducing a new feature called Spellcasting Focus. As long as the character is holding their focus, they can cast spells without using material components unless they have a specific cost in the spell description. This rule addressed a long-standing issue with spellcasting in the game. To be blunt, spell components often felt like more effort than it's worth. What? That's the whole point. Magic is so powerful that there has to be some sort of balancing factor for its use. That's what the components were. If you were bound and tied, you couldn't use your somatic gestures, and so you couldn't cast spells. If you ran out of components, you couldn't cast the spells. This magic is so powerful that they had to have something that would tamp down the abuse of something so powerful. You ever seen chain lightning used in a role-playing game? It's incredible. It's wild. Just a fireball is incredibly powerful. And this dude is just like, nah, more effort than it's worth. All right. I bet your games are just crazy. There's a lot to track on character sheets as it is, particularly if you're a spellcaster. Yeah, but that's a choice. No one's like forcing you to be that class. That's your choice. There's spell slots, what those spells can do, your spellcasting ability modifier, etc. And that's not even addressing your items, hit points, armor class, and weaponry. It's a lot to remember. That's why you have a character sheet. And plenty of players just want to get to the action and perform their spell without having to worry about having enough bat poop to cast Fireball. Safe to say, Dungeons & Dragons isn't going out of its way to remind you you have material components on you at all times. Still, keeping track of everything that goes into spellcasting surely adds immersion and flavor to a Dungeons & Dragons game, as Forgotten Realms creator Ed Greenwood showed in this funny and informative video on spellcasting. I'm not going to watch that. Nonetheless, most Dungeons & Dragons tables will stick to magic based on vibes and effects. The Mighty Nine, however, likes the crunch of a magical system that doesn't rely on vibes alone. In the first episode, we're introduced to several different magic users, the most prominent being Caleb Windagast. It established quickly that while Caleb is adept at somatic and verbal spells, his lack of income and the fact that he's on the run as a criminal wanted for murder has made finding material components exceedingly difficult. I know it's not for everyone, that idea, but I love that idea. But not impossible. In the first 3 episodes, we see Caleb using everything at his disposal, including dirt, hay, and at one icky point, feces. It may not be pretty, but it gets the job done. This stems from O'Brien being eager to show the use of components when playing Caleb in the campaign. And it's great to see that the show kept that element. I think that's fantastic. Not only is it great for role-playing and immersion, but it's inventive and creative play as well, just on part of the player character. I mean, I would love to see more than that in games. Furthermore, these material components are quickly consumed. One of the more heart-wrenching scenes of the first episode sees the wizard use the Find Familiar spell, which summons his old friend Frumpkin, a ginger cat. Unfortunately, Caleb loses traction on the spell, and before the two can properly reunite, Frumpkin disappears and the component is lost. While Caleb's issues with finding components for his spells doesn't last past the first bunch of episodes, it still brings an added depth to the world of the Mighty Nine concerning who can and can't do magic due to financial burdens. Yes, you may know the magic, but you don't have enough money to bring said magic to life with material components. For Caleb, his lack of funds forces him to steal, landing him in trouble with the law. Is magic then only available to individuals with wealth? I think that brings a very, very interesting class-based element to the game. Because, yeah, if you don't have an incredibly expensive diamond or gem or something, you can't raise someone from the dead. That's just the reality of it. You are limited in the spells that you can cast, whether you're cleric or wizard class, by the components that you can afford. This, again, is a balancing factor for the more powerful spells versus the less powerful spells throughout the use of a campaign. It's just, in my opinion, total logic. Adventures in D&D are rarely concerned with this due to the ease with which they can acquire gold, but it's an interesting topic and one the Mighty Nine seems eager to address. I think that's fantastic. I just really do. Contrast Caleb's magic then with the magic used by the lovable jester Lavore and the timid Fjord Stone. While neither uses components, the Mighty Nine still expertly reflects where their magic comes from. For Jester as a cleric, her magic stems from her belief in her chosen god, and that's coherent with established D&D lore. However, Jester is the only one who hears of her god, the Traveler. To an outsider looking in, it looks as though she's speaking to an imaginary friend, and yet the Traveler fuels her magic. So is this god real? Sure seems that's the case, but isn't that the case for every god? Outside of, even in Dragonlance, which is arguably one of the most god-centric and involved campaign settings, most people don't see the gods as they are granting power. They just feel them through their holy symbols. And that's, in my opinion, how it should be. You shouldn't see some sort of manifestation of a god when someone calls upon them or is praying to them. That would be absurd in my mind. And one thing that has left the Dungeons & Dragons game, which I think is incredibly important, you have to follow the dictates of your god's faith in order to be granted power by them. In 5th edition, even if you go directly against your god's mandates, their alignment, their choices of good or bad, they still give you power simply because you say you're their cleric. And so you just continue to have power. It doesn't matter. In older editions, you actually had to follow the religion of that god. If you didn't follow the religion, why would the god ever grant you anything? It doesn't make any sense at all. If I'm a powerful deity, why would I give my power to someone who doesn't even worship me or care about what I care about as a god? Furthering justice or equality or pain or torture or disease or undeath. It doesn't make sense why they would give you power if you don't follow them. This is how the modern edition lands, though. It doesn't matter what you do. You just claim to be a god of X or Y, and you get the power. It's totally absurd. As for Fjord, after being betrayed by a shipmate and left drowning in the sea, a mysterious Leviathan-like creature saves the half-orc. In exchange, Fjord is granted magical powers that let him shoot off beams of dark power and teleport. The latter is particularly well done, with water droplets to represent both his past as a sailor and his patron, dripping off of him when he reappears in the location he wants to be. That's actually pretty cool. The Mighty Nine's exploration of use of magic is excellent due to the level of commitment to showcasing how it works differently for everyone. Critical Role said that they were making a bigger deal in these magic a bigger deal in this series, and they have for the better. The next time I play a spellcaster in Dungeons and Dragons, I might actually go the extra mile to find components and use them after seeing how much it can add to the story. What drives me crazy about this is that that's how most people think. Like, that's the basic of using components and finding them throughout the course of adventuring. That was like part of the fun of playing a caster back when I was a kid. Because it wasn't just like, oh, I want to do this, bam, there it goes, you know? It was important. And that's why you took care of your spellcasters as well, and you protected them from the enemies. Because as soon as an enemy sees a spellcaster in a group, or they start muttering magical language, they're targeting that person because they don't know what's going to happen next. It could be a fireball. It could be them going to sleep and then being murdered by these people. They don't know, and so they have to stop them. That's why it's so important to protect them. But also, you want them to be able to cast their spells, so you're helping them quest after certain material components. And you're protecting them when they say, I'm going to cast a spell, or let you know that they're ready to cast a spell, or you intimate or, understand that that's going to happen. So you get in the way, protecting them from the enemy. Like, that's just tactics, and it's totally lost in this modern system. It drives me nuts. So is this stuff even important to any of you at all? Am I just sort of the old man sitting on the porch yelling at the kids to get off my lawn? I accept that if that's the case. Because I know that the way I like to play is different than the way most other people like to play. And what's important to me is not important to other people. But that's what's great about role-playing games, is the best way to play a role-playing game is the way that you want to play it. And that's all there is to it. There's no rules saying you have to like my version or I have to like your version. We can all just live in our own happy place, playing the games we love to play in the way we love to play them, and still all celebrate the games themselves. So I'm really stoked to actually check this out. I've never really watched even a full episode of any Critical Role ever, but I have watched the first series, The Legend of Vox Machina, and I loved it. And all it does is make me claw for a Dragonlance project by the same people who made it. The same designers and artists and illustrators. It would be amazing. And it looks so good too. The voice acting is spectacular. The sound design is amazing. The art direction is stellar. And it all would fit so beautifully. Especially The Legend of Vox Machina would be perfect for the 5th Age of Krynn with the Dragon Overlords. That whole story is very much like the era of the 5th Age in Dragonlance. And those incredibly powerful dragons were just like Dragon Overlords. Oh my gosh, it would have been amazing if we could get something, anything like this in Dragonlance. So yeah, are you going to be checking this out? Let me know in the comments. And how do you like to play Magic? Is it something where you want to be, meticulous with it? They have to have spell books that fit all of their spells in order to cast and memorize the spells. Do they have to follow the mandates of their god, or do they just get the power simply because they're priests? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Okay, the next one. Behind Dungeons and Dragons, the Immersive Quest. For the first time ever, fans in the US will be able to step inside the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Launched October 16th in Plano, Texas, Dungeons & Dragons The Immersive Quest is a 60-minute adventure that blends live theater, cinematic storytelling, and hands-on interactive challenges inside a multi-room environment. Guests will choose their adventurer, journey through D&D locations, face classic monsters, and ultimately square off against a massive dragon. Quote, for more than 50 years, Dungeons & Dragons has united millions of players through epic storytelling, boundless imagination, and the thrill of adventure, says Matt Prolx. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Senior Vice President, Global Experiences, Partnership, and Music, Hasbro. After enchanting fans in Canada, Dungeons & Dragons: The Immersive Quest is now inviting US fans to step inside the story, become the heroes of their own quest, and see the magic of Dungeons & Dragons come alive like never before. This is like a supported LARPing, like a corporation is backing a LARPing experiment. After welcoming thousands of fans in Toronto, the experience has become a global entertainment concept and has moved to the US. It's meant to work as both a bucket list event for longtime players and an entry point for curious newcomers. Eric Broylet, president and founder of Vibrant Marketing, the licensee responsible for Dungeons & Dragons: The Immersive Quest, caught up with the License Global about how it built the experience, how it's building on D&D's legacy, and more. So, License Global. This experience is described as equal parts of immersive theater, themed attraction, and fandom events. How did you balance these three entertainment formats to create this cohesive experience? Eric, at the end of the day, I think our guiding principle in all this is that we really respect the fact that people are coming to see us spending money, so we really want to give them the most for the dollar they invested in us. Most of the time, we like to use great set design and actor interaction to really put them in the mood, to enter the universe. There's nothing that beats the human interaction. When people are playing the role of an elf or a rogue, we try to really start hard with this type of human interaction. It's a great segue to come in and after that, when you go into the dungeon. In the adventuring mode, there's a lot of that too, but there's more interactive stations and props. The balancing act is using technology and set design as secondary tools to really put people in the experience. The immersive category is a young category, and the participants are getting more refined, so they always expect something more. Dungeons & Dragons is a 50-year legacy. What are you balancing, honoring the expectations of longtime fans while creating an entry point for curious newcomers who may have never played? All the people involved in the project on our side are fans. We all play. It was important for us to stay true to what D&D is. You and your friends explore the world and do some cool things that you can't do in the real world. We tried to bring it all in the tropes of D&D that you can think of, creating your character, getting hired to do an adventure in a medieval type of tavern, exploring the dungeon, fighting the dragon. All the basic tropes need to be there to make sure that they appeal to a wide audience. We have plenty of Easter eggs that pay homage to the core fans, and for the newbie, we just wanted to sell the adventure. You welcomed over 30,000 guests in Toronto, and then you extended the run. But now in the U.S. debut location is Plano, Texas. Why was that your debut location, and how does that inform your broader touring strategy? The Toronto run was mostly about us running and testing and improving what the experience is like. The real debut is in Texas. The reason why we picked that location is that it's a very interesting market for an immersive experience. Funny enough, the space that we have was the space that was previously occupied by the Minecraft experience, so we were able to capitalize this as a destination. What role do you see it playing in broadening the mainstream of Dungeons & Dragons? How does this experience capitalize and contribute to that momentum? We have a great partnership with Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. Those guys are super involved in the project. We're not just flying solo. They have their own creative output. Wizards of the Coast has an ambition to turn Dungeons & Dragons into a billion-dollar brand like they did for Magic. Those types of initiatives that we put together with them are a perfect vehicle for recruiting new fans. New fans may know about D&D, but they don't know the full extent of it. It's really like a powerful engine of recruitment and engagement. The adventures are celebrated afterward at the War Deep Market, which is our musical market, with everything at the end of the experience. You can enjoy a cool drink and buy some food. It's a great testament to those types of programs from an engagement perspective in building the brand for the future. How are you engaging with the existing community to build awareness and authenticity? Before we entered the market, we did a market study for what we think we can expect from the market. We study previous similar experiences. We are likely extremely involved from the user perspective with local influencers, and some of them come from the game type of mindset. Some of them are more specialized in lifestyle, what to do with your family type of mentality. We're spending time with them, but also we really build with schools, with gaming clubs, retail locations as well, to basically create a momentum effect. We invest in community events. We're partnering with an anime festival there and everything like that to have a like minded approach. We invest significantly in marketing and media to get the word out. With D&D, this experience was 50 years in the making. We're studying other markets to see what we're going to go next. Right now, we have a few cities to line up. Now, what I'm interested in this is what it would be like to walk in, because we've had immersive experiences like escape rooms and haunted houses and stuff. But this isn't just you going in and experiencing stuff being thrown at you. This is you involved. And one thing that I've noticed with D&D is when people are not familiar with it, when they're first being brought into it, they're very timid and they're very hesitant in engaging in a role-playing aspect. But if that's what this focus is, I could see a lot of experiences, especially with people like that are not really into acting, but they just want to go and see what it's like, not having as much fun and actually dampening the experience for the people they're with because they're not really into it as much as the other people are. So I think it would be very interesting to have exit interviews from groups that have gone through it to see honestly, what was it like for you? Did you feel silly or stupid, or were you just ready to just dive right in? And again, everyone's going to land in this in a different place, but as much as I love actually sitting down and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I could go through and act through it, I don't think I would want to do an immersive experience like this. Like the idea of LARPing in general never attracted me. Going out, dressing up, and like playing live as if it was Dungeons and Dragons. And so I would be very interested to see if this actually does have legs and grows to be something more than just this one experiment in Plano, Texas. So I do have friends in Texas. Now I would ask you guys, go check this out and report back. I'd love to hear it. And would you like to see this? Is this something that you would be interested in going and actually running through? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Hey, Steve, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Thank you very much. I definitely will. Chris, always good to see you, man. All right, last story of the night. Battlemarked is a D&D skin dropped over Demio. A good sequel to Demio, but don't expect much as a D&D fan. Crossovers can be the bane or the blessing of entertainment. Sometimes we get to pilot a Megazord in Fortnite, but other times it feels more like two franchises smashed together, and the whole isn't greater than the sum of its parts. That's unfortunately the case with Demio X Dungeons & Dragons Battlemarked, which plays as a good sequel to 2021's Demio, but has almost nothing to do with D&D. It should be a good match. Demio is a dungeon crawler originally developed as a virtual reality game that recreates the experience of playing a fantasy board game quite well, just not the fantasy of playing an RPG. Demio is much more similar to games like Descent, Journeys into the Dark, and Mice and Mystics. You explore a map, fight monsters, gather treasures, and proceed to the next area. In fact, Battlemarked is presented as a tactical, cooperative, digital board game set in Forgotten Realms, and that's a very accurate description. Battlemarked takes most of the same game mechanics as its predecessor and drops them into the world of D&D, the Forgotten Realms to be specific. 2 campaigns are available, one set around Neverwinter, Embers of Chaos, and one in Icewind Dale, Crown of Frost. 2 popular locations from that setting. The plot, at least for the Icewind Dale campaign that I played, is textbook D&D. An evil entity is uniting belligerent species to create an army that will take over the land, and it has to be stopped. I do enjoy how accurate the setting is. Icewind Dale is the setting of Rime of the Frost Maiden, my favorite 5e campaign. Battlemarked features many references to canonical locations, people, and events. I was especially excited at the prospect of exploring Ithrin, the lost Netherese city buried under a glacier. I have no idea what these places or adventures are that he's referencing. I know nothing about the Forgotten Realms. However, this is where the connection with D&D ends. Not having played Demio, I went into this expecting at least some port of the D&D rules, but that isn't the case. Battlemarked recreates the gameplay of the first title almost entirely. This is some similarities with D&D's combat system, such as the fact that you're moving minis on a grid and an action economy, but that's about it. This game feels like a D&D skin dropped over Demio, and the result is not necessarily an improvement. For example, Battlemarked adds a new feature taken from Dungeons & Dragons: skill checks. While exploring a map outside of combat, you'll receive a prompt for a skill check to potentially reveal hidden details or to persuade or deceive an NPC. You have no choice over which character takes the check because you can't exit the conversation, so you're stuck with whatever many you're using in that moment. This oversight fundamentally misunderstands what makes skill checks a compelling game mechanic. Characters have different, predetermined stats used for these checks, so ideally, you'd want to optimize what character you're using based on the circumstances. If you fail a check, there's no way to try again with another character, meaning that you can easily lose important information. Another most frustrating example of why this mesh doesn't work is that you're always in turn mode, and I mean always. This isn't an issue in a game where you're constantly exploring a dungeon map, but Battlemarked adds a home-based location, the Ramsackle Inn in the Crown of Frost campaign, where you go back to collect quests and interact with NPCs. It's clearly a concession to the role-playing aspects of RPGs, but you still have to move your minis on the map and take turns, which makes absolutely no sense. No player in the history of D&D has ever said, I move 30 feet to get to the bar counter, use my action to speak with the innkeeper, then pass the turn. Battlemarked also tries to lean a bit into Dungeons & Dragons' class progression system, but here too the results left you unimpressed. While Demio has no traditional level up system, it does in Battlemarked. But if you're playing solo, you can only level up your main character. The other 3 hirelings in your party stay stuck at level 1 forever. Class progression doesn't resemble D&D in the slightest, so don't expect previous knowledge to help you. Everything in this game, from equipment to class actions to spells, is regulated by cards that you consume and pick up during combat. It's a good recreation of a board game experience, but it lacks the management and depth that a true D&D game should have. It doesn't help that it's buggy too. I could not progress into the campaign further than 40% because the game locked me out. After completing a quest for the goblins of Car Kolok, I went back to their fortress to collect my reward. However, once on the map, I could not interact with the goblins, who are up on a ledge on the fortress's wall despite a quest's icon popping over their heads. What's worse, I could also not exit the area to go back to the main map and continue with the main quest. As the game only has a single autosave function, I could also not reload, so all my progress was essentially lost. I'm not sure if this is a bug or if I'm too dumb to figure out a solution, but my suggestion is to stay away from that Mimic quest. It's clear that this game was made with multiplayer as the priority, so most of my criticisms may not apply to that mode. Battlemarked has also been developed for PC VR and PSVR 2. The virtual reality experience may improve the game a lot compared to my playthrough on PS5. I can see people having fun playing this with friends, clearing dungeons and progressing in the campaign. However, I'm not sure if Demio players will enjoy the changes brought to the game, while I'm fairly certain that D&D players will not find any particular appeal here. Listen, I'm aware that the rules of D&D are not perfect. Combat can drag, the game is often unbalanced, and so on. However, these rules are also familiar. People could get into Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and not feel overwhelmed because they played AD&D before. Those games recreated that tabletop experience through familiar rules while adding rich extra layers on top. The same thing happened with the Neverwinter Nights series, and more recently with Baldur's Gate 3. None of these were one-to-one transpositions, but they kept enough to ease D&D players in. Solasta went one step further and completely leaned into D&D rules to perfectly recreate the tabletop experience in a game that's about fighting and exploring. Demio x Dungeons & Dragons seems instead to be following the trend of slapping the D&D label onto anything, now that the brand is so popular. While tabletop dungeon crawler may seem the perfect partner, D&D is much more than that. Overall, if you're a fan of turn-based dungeon crawlers with a virtual tabletop vibe and enjoy a sprinkling of Forgotten Realms lore, then you may enjoy this game. If you're looking for a D&D tactical RPG, then this is not for you. You'd better stick to Solasta. I wasn't even familiar with Solasta or any of this. What this actually reminded me of was the D&D 3D map system that they developed recently and then canned. I had played it with friends when they opened up the playtest and we ran through the modules in it, but even it, developed by Wizards of the Coast, meant to be a battle map 3D game, didn't use all the rules that were in the player's handbook, or the characters that had actual special abilities couldn't use those special abilities because they just weren't baked into the game system itself or the map system itself. It was very frustrating for us while we were playing, and there was tons of bugs and, loading on everyone's PC, depending on their PC build, was really slow. And so you had to sit around and wait a lot of the times or reload. And it was a nightmare to try to play that stupid battle map. And I'm glad that they canned the thing because it never lived up to the promise of what they claimed it was going to be. And their current D&D Maps app is awesome. It's not as good, in my opinion, as Roll20, but it's really good. And it works perfectly with 5th edition right now. And so I'm really, really happy when I am running my Tyranny of Dragons campaign with my 2024 5th edition crew, and we're just having fun in the maps program and automatically pulling monsters and stuff directly from the catalog of information. I mean, it works really, really well. So I don't know why anyone would go to something like this, which is a bad port of a video game. I wanted to showcase it because I was unfamiliar with it, and for people who might be playing it, they might enjoy it. So if you're aware of Demio x Dungeons & Dragons, Battlemarked, let me know. Is this something that is worth giving it a try? Should I get a bunch of people and try to play through it? Or is it something I should avoid, like the article author here is blatantly stating? Let me know in the comments. I appreciate what you have to say. All right, Steve, you tried running the classic Dragonlance campaign with 5e rules. You can guess how it went. Yeah, I always err on the side of going back to the edition of the game that the module was built for. That means you're going to be playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons with battle system mass combat game. It's going to be run a lot smoother because that's how it was intended to be played. Even the collections that were sort of rewritten and recontextualized in 2nd edition, and then in 3rd edition, and then in 5th edition, etc., etc. I just, and when you see people playing it in 5th edition, it just doesn't look interesting to me because you're using an entirely different system that has nothing to do with Dragonlance. You're having to make tons of lore concessions, and it's just a nightmare. So why not just play it in the edition that it was built for? It's fun. It's simple to play. There's very little learning curve or math involved if you're using a VTT to do it. And if you are doing it in the game, they have those attack calculators for 1st edition, which make doing the math incredibly easy. I have one of those on my website, and I have links to the original source that I found it on. And then, of course, both of those blogs are recreated from the Dragon Magazine article about Tracy Hickman's battle calculator. So it's something that is very, very simple to dive into and play. I have a whole how to play AD&D playlist on this YouTube channel for people who want to learn how to play AD&D in order to play the Dragonlance original modules, which are all available digitally. You can just run through it and have a great time. So let's see. You're not a coder, but building an all D&D mechanics into a game seems daunting. Oh, absolutely it does. Which is why I would argue it's never successfully been able to be pulled off 100%. There's always concessions. The randomness of D&D seems to just belie the ability to code for every possibility. Derek, thanks for tuning in, man. You're running Shadow of the Dragon Queen with 5e and MCDM's Kingdoms and Warfare. I'm not familiar with MCDM or Kingdoms and Warfare. It's great, you say. You just fix things you don't like and bring back classics, like no sorcerers or warlocks. Oh, that's cool. And if we reflect back on Dragonlance in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I did a whole video about how Dragonlance broke D&D. And what it was saying was that it broke D&D conventions because it changed fundamental aspects of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in order to fit Dragonlance from the beginning. And so that's what I've done in my 5th edition, 2024 5th edition game, is use the same inspiration from how Dragonlance changed AD&D into how I'm having Dragonlance change 2024 D&D. And with those inspirations in mind, it actually makes it pretty smooth. And I also have a video on that, on playing D&D 2024 with Dragonlance and what conversions would need to be made in order to make it work flawlessly, specifically in the 5th Age of Krynn. And really, it's the 5th Age of Krynn that I'm interested in when it comes to 5th edition, because it does have stuff like warlocks and sorcerers, you know, and so that really lends to the 5th Age. Or if you really want to go back to like the Age of Dreams or the early Age of Might, you could probably still make it work there as well. But it's just not as fluid and easy to do. All right, so let me just go through some of the notes that Chris put in here. What DL characters would you want to see future stories about? I.e., what happened to Dalmor or Gilthanas? I want to know what happens in the world after the end of 5th Age. I want to know, do the Minotaurs continue their incursion into Kerr, the Plains of Dust, into the Carolize, into Solamnia? Or is there like a reunification of the Whitestone Council, as it were, and the elves in Othwa Kenti join up with the Knights of Solamnia, the Legion of Steel, and even the Dark Knights, and push back against the Minotaurs in Ambien, former Sylvanisty? I think it would be interesting to see that war take place and what it looks like when it takes place. What happened to the surviving characters? You were inspired by the Odyssey of Gilthanas story that I read on the channel. Yeah, I'm going to give a full review once I'm fully finished with the Odyssey of Gilthanas, but as far as the book is concerned, I'm done with it, but it has appendixes and stuff and how to play a dragon card game. And so I'm going to finish reading those before I give my full review of that book. But just to say, I was a little bummed with the story because it wasn't a clear narrative. It sort of bounced around between different characters telling this overarching fable about what happened with Gilthanas, and it's not the same as a first-person narrative story, So I don't know. It just wasn't very fun for me. All right, Johan, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. 3.5 DL books aren't hard to find, and a lot of them focus on the 5th Age. Yeah, and there's some of the best DL books out there, like full stop. I played a lot of 3.5 D&D, and while it's not my favorite game system, it was a lot of fun playing the new, Key of Destiny, Spectre of Sorrows, if I'm remembering the names of the modules. It was fun playing them. I really loved them. And I thought that the authors, Sovereign Press and Margaret Weiss Productions, and all of the authors that contributed to it, including our friends at Dragonlance Nexus, did an amazing job of taking everything from the Saga system, 2nd edition and 1st edition, and condensing it all into some really fantastic source books that are just fantastic. They're just really, really great. So if you haven't gotten them already, they're available in digital formats, or you can get them in aftermarket. They're definitely worth it. They're really great sources. You started the Red Basic set of D&D. Caught the bug early. So did I, Steve. So did I. I had the Holmes edition when I was a young man playing it, and I loved it. Loved it. I still have very, very fond memories of that. All right. Well, That's going to do it for this Order of Aesthetic news episode. Will you be picking up the Dragonlance Chronicles as a gift? Do you enjoy animated Critical Role series? And finally, are immersive experiences too much like LARPs and thus exclusionary to regular fans? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.